Hi, this is Daria and welcome to the second part of the video, which has strategies and tips for those of you who are just starting or thinking about starting your piano journey. The previous chapter was about goals and strategies, and in this part I will discuss what to think about when you're planning your practice routine, what to expect, what resources you need, and what repertoire to choose. Practice planning and expectations. I'm going to give you a few tools to help improve your practice routine. It's not concrete practice this exercise, but it's something to more general what to do and what not to do in your practice from one day to another. So based on your goals, you want to make a plan. And a short-term plan is as important as your long-term plan. A short-term plan could be a week, and the long-term plan could be 3 months, 6 months, 1 month even longer, but I would say 1 month is more of a short term. And you don't need to achieve it all. It's just having a structure gives you concrete ideas to work with to achieve. And you can learn to understand your pace, your learning pace, and then adjust your goals accordingly. So you don't need to achieve everything, but something concrete you can manage, right? You have to also set yourself goals for daily practice, but those goals you need to be flexible with. So you can have an idea. A goal can be, I want to learn this one measure today, or I want to learn to play soft and loud today. I want to understand that. It's something what you want to do during your practice session, but you can't necessarily know whether you achieved the result yet until a certain amount of time has passed. It has to do with how we learn, something like that, like a musical skill or piano, for example. You need to be patient and you need to rely on gradual and consistent improvement, right? Steady improvement over time, rather than achieving something immediately in one session. Not every goal is achievable in one sitting. Especially if it has to do with habits. If you want to build a habit, you need a couple of weeks, right? If you today you learned how to hold the hand properly, excellent. But does it guarantee that after one session, the next day you're going to come in to the piano and play it exactly the same way? Not really. If you are good, then do it consistently through a couple of weeks, and then you can say, okay, I learned how to properly hold my hand. Make sure that you're building consistent habit. It's very important and paramount that each new session you repeat what you have done in the previous session. So I would start each practice session with that review to ensure that you can replicate and retain what you have just learned or learned so far, to build consistency and the mastery of movement. It doesn't mean you have to repeat everything you've learned from the very, very beginning if you've been doing it for a few months, right? As soon as it becomes second nature, you don't no longer need to repeat it. But if it's something fresh, I would still keep repeating it for at least a couple of weeks. If you feel like, okay, after 1 week you really got it, you don't have to think about it anymore, good. But sometimes you notice yourself, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm sticking my thumb out now, and okay, I need to think about it a little more. So be patient with yourself. Give yourself time to achieve those goals. Another idea with practicing routine is practice with a critical ear. Do not just play. I don't want to take joy away from your practice session. Of course, you need to enjoy what you're doing. But if you're only focusing on enjoyment and you're not noticing what you are actually doing, you're just having fun, then you're not really learning, you're just enjoying it, right? But to learn why is critical thinking important is because you can actually assess what comes out. Try to develop ability to hear yourself as if it was someone else playing, like a third person perspective. If it's difficult for you to determine, let's say you wanted to know whether you're keeping the tempo straight, or are you speeding up or slowing down? Oftentimes I would ask my students, do you think you're just speeding up or slowing down? They would say, I don't know. Because they were not listening, right? They were not keeping track of their own playing. One thing to do is you can do it without the teacher, is you can record yourself and play it back. And then you will have an idea. And sometimes you'll be shocked if you're like, oh, I thought I did a diminuendo here. I thought I played very softly, but you actually didn't at all. It didn't come out like that. So you really need to be aware of how it comes out rather than what you put in, right? And the last thing I'm going to say is very simple, is discipline, dedication, and consistency. Building a habit of playing the piano, especially in the very beginning. Make a routine out of it. I recommend, highly recommend, doing it every day, or maybe doing it 6 days a week and not doing it on a weekend or 5 days or something. That way you can retain the best. Again, muscles is important to train them again and again, and train your brain activity in the same way too, consistently. If you can develop a ritual, I do it after I have coffee in the morning, or I do it before dinner or something, and don't leave it to the moment where you're completely tired and you just want to sleep and oh my god, I forgot to do it today, I have to do this half hour now. Try to do it, if it's a new habit for you, for at least first couple of weeks, try to fit it in a time of the day where you still have some energy. You can split your practice into 2 sessions, like 15 minutes and 15 minutes, or 30. I wouldn't go less than 30 minutes a day for adults, is because sometimes it takes like 10 minutes to even get into it, like to really focus, right? And if you only give yourself 15 minutes, then 10 minutes it takes you to kind of get going, and then you only practice for 5 minutes. So having a longer chunk is easier. More than 1 hour in the beginning is, if you can dedicate, great, but it can be difficult to concentrate out of that. After the 45 minutes, you might just not even be there anymore. So you could do 45 minutes, maybe actively thinking and focusing, and the 15 minutes just playing around, and give yourself some pleasure too. Don't take it away completely. You should enjoy, but you should also have moments where you're really focusing on the result. Now, I'll briefly mention a couple of type-specific strategies. For type 1, if you're focusing on one specific style of music or pieces from the same artist, you're most likely going to encounter certain repetition of elements or patterns. So try to make connections between similar patterns that move from one piece to the next. And then create exercises to train your fingers, to create this muscle memory and coordination with common patterns to facilitate fluency of your movement. I call it build your toolbox of patterns, and you really use your understanding of musical structures, and again, theory is very helpful, to help you make those connections more apparent. For example, if you have in the left hand, you like waltzes, let's say, and you have an accompaniment that looks something like this, a bass note and then 2 chords, right? And you notice, okay, so if this could be, and okay, something like that. So you can create, based on that pattern, an exercise that will, for example, just move a sequence of moves that are same using different keys. Let's say moving up a step each time, right? So I have, so you see how there sounds very similar, just go back and forth, and that way your hand already remembers, okay, this is something I'm going to use over and over, so it becomes second nature. So you can like talk, drink tea, and left hand will still do it, right? You can coordinate that with the right hand doing something at the same time. If you see an Alberti bass pattern that sounds something like this, you can move that up, right? So this is your own creation. I plan on making exercises like that into a certain exercise book, but I'm not quite there yet. So when I'm finished, I'll let you know. For now, create your own, and will help you navigate through each new piece faster because you'll already be familiar with this building blocks. Oh, okay, I've seen that accompaniment before. Okay, it sounds like this, so my hand already knows where to go. For type 2, if you are focused on learning by ear, you really need to target developing your inner hearing. I will make a special video on how to help you develop inner hearing, but just remember, a few things you can do to help yourself to train your inner listening is, for example, finding simple melodic lines that you like by ear. You can start with Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, I don't know. Okay, up or down? Up. Oh, sorry, I didn't know. Okay, I said up, right? So is it here or is it farther than that? It's farther, so it's not this note. Oh, it's that note, so it's 5 notes apart. Okay, so next note, and so on. So you teach yourself how to find a melody based on whether the contour of the melody goes up or down. Is it leaping or is it stepping? Do you think the melody is in major, kind of happy melody, or is it in minor, kind of sad or serious? Is the melody using some kind of structure? Is the melody... If you recognize that as a unit, as a triad, that's good, it helps. Things like that. So finding melodies by ear and getting comfortable using the whole keyboard, white and black keys, for your improvisation, for your composition. So if you are a type 2 person who wants to learn just by trial and error, just trying things here, you're creating your own, don't limit yourself just this area because your right hand's here, left hand's here, you're only gonna play this. Experiment, use your 2 hands here, or 2 hands here, or black and white keys, like things together. These keys, I don't know, whatever you want. Just remember that you can even cross hands. Remember to experiment with the whole keyboard and not be like this in the box, right? Hopefully you have a full keyboard. That's another, that we will talk about in the resources. And don't forget to develop your hands equally, meaning that especially if you're a type 2 person improviser, you don't want to be handicapped. You don't want to give melody to the right hand all the time because, well, your left hand has low notes, can be played beautifully. I used very bad fingering, don't do that. Sorry, I was just imagining something different, but then it came out. Anyways, develop hopefully both of the hands in the same way. And what can help is practicing exercises, something like Hanon. Some people think it's boring, but something that resembles these things. And so on. Why is that good? Because that your hands simultaneously play the same type of movement. And both of them will get equal training. So you don't end up with left hand being handicapped, only able to play 1 note at a time, while right hand can play the whole scale or 5 notes. Make sure you practice Hanons, scales, chords, and such equally in both hands. And even if your left hand is weaker, then give left hand even more training than your right hand, if you are right-handed. Finally, to the repertoire and resources. Do you know what your biggest resource is when it comes to learning something? Did you guess it? I personally believe that it's motivation. If you have motivation, you can move mountains, right? I really want this, and you put all the energy into it. As soon as you lose motivation, no matter how many hours you're going to spend or how you're going to force yourself doing it, it's going to become a burden, no longer an exciting thing to do, right? And you don't want that. One thing you can do to keep your motivation active that way is to draw inspiration, more inspiration, watch YouTube videos with that music that you like, go to the concerts of the artist, watch other people learn that piece, see if you can compare interpretations, find something new every time, get to understand a little bit more musical structures, or see if you can, write your own. What is it, something new that you understood about at this time, or something that sounded similar, reminded you of that? How did it make you feel? Things like that. But another thing that has to do with motivation is that unfortunately, no matter how hard we try, due to our lives being volatile, sometimes the motivation can recede and go down. One way to go through that period is to keep the discipline. And sometimes you need to really start doing it, and then the motivation will come back. Keep at it. Don't lose touch with it. Even if you feel like, oh, I don't feel like doing it for a few days and nothing seems interesting, push yourself a little bit. And just remember, long term, your everyday effort, no matter how minimal, will play a big role and will pay off. So push your motivation a little bit by actions. Sometimes that's what we need, and it helps. But there are other resources too. So one important resource, of course, is to have a teacher. And not everyone can afford having a teacher, private teacher. Some of you can afford it, maybe every week is great, then maybe you wouldn't even be watching this video, your teacher would be telling you these things. Some of you can afford a teacher maybe once a month. Some of you have never had a teacher and maybe won't be able to afford one for a while. So what you can do is, obviously, YouTube is a great platform to look for things that you specifically want to learn. If you want to focus on one specific skill, you want to learn how to sit or how to hold your hand properly, you can look for that. If you want to learn how to play scales, you can look for that thing, different things. If you want to focus on certain repertoire, there's plenty of tutorials. And there's also a way of acting like your own teacher, structuring your practice in such a way where you do this kind of role play. If you know how to be a teacher, kind of ask yourself questions. How did this go? How did this go? So you become, you assume the role of a teacher. And really the most important thing the teacher does for us, it's not to tell us how to do things, but it is to give us feedback about how we are actually doing things, because they hear it. And that has to do with going to the point of critical ear. So if you can learn that, it will help you even without a teacher to be more aware of what is actually happening under your hands. If you notice yourself having a certain bad habit, let's say, there is a way to fix it. You just need to be patient and you need to really focus on that. If you don't have a teacher to remind you, you need to remember, okay, for this week or this month, I'm going to be focusing mainly on making sure my finger doesn't go like this, but rather holds the fingertip rounded and strong, right? And this is what you're going to focus on. Anytime you play something, this is going to come forward. And this is one way to help you if you don't have a teacher and you really need to battle a certain habit, let's say. Another very obvious resource that you need to play the piano is the actual piano itself, right? So it can vary. Your access to a piano can be digital, acoustic, grand, upright, hybrid, anything. But there is a bottom line that I consider to be the most desirable. I wouldn't go below that if you can. Again, everyone has different circumstances. I can only recommend something. I can only tell you my opinion. But then again, based on your circumstances, you can choose something different. It needs to be a full 88 size keyboard or a piano. Better if all the keys are in working order and in tune if you have an acoustic piano. And it's very important to have that keys being weighted, fully weighted. If you have a keyboard, it's not always the case. Some of them are not touch sensitive at all, meaning it's not going to make a difference whether you play like this or like this, it's going to come out the same sound. And that's not going to help you develop any kind of expressivity or nuances. So I very strongly encourage you to not get that type of keyboard. Something that has keys that are slightly weighted. For example, Yamaha P45 is a keyboard that often is advertised as weighted keys, but it's not fully weighted keys. One of my students, a young girl, she used to have that piano and it worked for her for the time being. She had small, weak fingers and she was just beginning to learn. But for someone with a big adult heavy hand, that's not going to work. It's really not fully weighted. So make sure that you get keys that are fully weighted and that can fully respond to the type of touch that you're going to inflict on them. There is a big debate on whether it's better to have an acoustic or digital, whether it's completely impossible to train professionally on a keyboard. You know, there are opinions about this and they always differ. I can tell you what I think, but you don't have to take it, right? So I personally, if I could choose a decent acoustic, I would always choose an acoustic over a digital. However, as you know, I personally do not own an acoustic piano right now because my circumstances where I live do not allow me to have heavy, big, even upright, let alone grand piano. I have access to grand piano in the practice room, so I daily practice on the grand piano, which is great. But there was a period in my life where I didn't have access to grand piano, and I practiced on my P515, which I loved. Did I become a worse musician? No. But my story is different. I've been trained for a very long time on acoustic pianos. Did I get used to the keyboard? Yes. Was it difficult for me then to adapt to acoustic piano? Yes. It took me a couple months to really get back into it after not playing for a couple of years. So it does matter. And of course, if you can afford something like a hybrid, which you can still practice in headphones if you're worried about your neighbors, or if it's too heavy to have an actual piano, or it's too expensive, or whatever it is. Anyway, so your circumstances, I don't want to spend too much on that, but circumstances can be different. And based on that, you can choose a good digital piano, but don't choose a piano that's too short or not capable of reacting to your weight and how you press the keys is just not going to help you learn, and you're going to lose a lot of interesting, beautiful, expressive features that a piano allows you to experience. When it comes to books as resources, there are two types of books that I recommend. One is a concrete book. It's this one. And that's what I use in my other videos, and you've probably seen it before if you watch my videos, and I use it with my adult students. I don't use it with my children's students because it's just not meant for children. I use something else for them. This book allows you to understand, to conceptualize everything yourself, even without a teacher. Why and how we move our body, our hands, our fingers around the keyboard, and how certain gestures mean certain things for the piano player, how we use them. It explains everything in detail, and it gives a lot of useful exercises. At the beginning of the book, I've already filmed a few exercises. I will keep adding to that. So if you need guidance with the beginning, you can look on my channel and you can look along with the book. And this book will train you for your good habits, for proper technique, and for developing all sorts of textures and coordination, things that you can encounter in any type of piano literature. A second type of book I recommend is having a repertoire book, a book where you will be learning actual tunes that will help you gradually progress from one level to the next. And that can be different. For me, for example, believe it or not, I use the same book for children and adults who are beginners. With adults, we usually go through it faster. The books that I use are here. The series of books I use are here. And they're very short pieces, but each of them has a little challenge, and it's always a new challenge. It's either coordination or a dynamic or a new type of articulation or anything, or a new type of movement, something that you learn each time, but it's short enough so it doesn't get dull, so you can learn it quickly. Like in 1 week you learn 2 or 3 and then you progress. So you see yourself moving forward fast and learning new things every time. So your expressive palette again and your palette of coordination and everything is diverse, and it's moving somewhere, so you can see that growth. That's why I like them to be short, sweet, and vivid. Also, they give fun characters. You can really engage with them. My adults never complain that they're dull, never. And the other thing I do usually, I give them those short pieces to quickly go through, and then I give them one longer, a little more challenging piece that they can work on for like a few months, let's say. So you can do the same if you don't have a specific goal. I want to learn this piece, or even if you do have one piece that you really want to learn, but you need help getting there. So you might, because the problem is with the pieces that you really want to learn and you have no idea how to assess the difficulty, it might frustrate you. So you need to be careful not to overwhelm yourself and be realistic and patient with your expectations of your repertoire. Right? The diversity of interesting characters and various tasks in each piece. That's a great way to train your brain along with your fingers and muscle memory. And not to be disappointed that the one piece you really want to play isn't coming along quite yet. It might take you a year to play that piece. Some pieces are that difficult, right? But you want to see yourself progressing. So don't hesitate to pick small, fun pieces that later, each time, that previous challenge that was difficult in that one piece will become much easier in the next piece you see that challenge it. And this is how we build one over another. You can choose a different book. It doesn't have to be this book. But I personally stay away from series of books for adults that focus on very repetitive and simple patterns from one piece to the next, and they don't really differ that much. It becomes so repetitive that it becomes boring, and it's a little less engaging than those little pieces for me. It depends on your style and on your taste, of course, but you can pick a book that suits you better. All right, so let's finish up quickly. For the last type of book that I recommend you can get is a book of exercises to train your fingers, to train your coordination. And one of those kind of exercises, very popular, you probably heard that name maybe, is Hanon. exercises right here, the 60 exercises. You can start with the first 20, and that's plenty. This book also has, my version of the book at least, has the fingerings for all the scales and arpeggios, which is also a great resource. Because when you need to learn a scale, you better look up what the fingering is best to use, because otherwise you're not going to get too far. One book that I recommend is by Dohnani. I like that book a lot. It's exercises of different nature, a little bit than Hanon. But the thing about both of these books you have to be careful is you need to learn how to read the notes to be able to use them. Or you can find certain tutorials on maybe on YouTube that go along with the video and show you exactly which keys they're using. So that is an option. The Dohnani exercises are a little bit more advanced, but the first few of them are quite manageable, meaning they're easy to understand, but they will still challenge your coordination. Don't overplay exercises, so limit them again to, in the beginning, like 10-15 minutes, not more, because otherwise you might overdo it. Don't overdo it. So that's all for the repertoire and resources. Thank you so much for staying with me for this long video. I hope it was worth it. Let me know in the comments what you think. Stay tuned for more videos. Bye.